Hey guys, today I'm going to be reviewing season 6 of The Crown. So before I head into my thoughts and feelings on this final season of The Crown, just a quick disclaimer, I am definitely going to be talking about spoilers, but once again, this is all part of history. This is all very incredibly well documented for the most part. So yeah, I don't consider history to be a spoiler. So, The Crown returned. I'm putting up this review a little after the fact, but that's okay. um, I really enjoyed what Netflix did with this season of The Crown because they've kind of been doing this for other shows like Stranger Things and The Witcher. They split The Crown kind of in half, sort of. We had like 4 episodes 1 month, and then like a month later we had like the remainder of the episodes, and I kind of like that. It kind of gives you a little bit longer to spend with the show rather than binging it over like the course of like a weekend. I liked what Netflix did there with this final season because it kind of left you to linger with that. So yeah, we had 10 episodes once again this season. And yeah, what we are primarily doing in this final season of The Crown, we are following the royal family through the late 90s into the early 2000s, give or take. And yet some of the big topics that happened, we have the death of Diana, the death of Princess Margaret, the death of the Queen Mother. We got Prime Minister Tony Blair arriving. We got Kate and William, but yeah, no Harry and Meghan. And plus, Charles and Camilla finally tying the knot. So yeah, a lot. Yeah, guys. Plus the Queen's Jubilee. Which one? The Golden Jubilee. But no death of Queen Elizabeth II. You guys, the show kind of hinted at that in the final episode. But yeah, the finale was not about death. I mean, in a way it sort of was with Elizabeth like planning all of her, her future funeral and whatnot. And in a way it was about death, but I think at the same time about life, life of the royal family and their role and their function in that and whatnot. Um, you guys, this final season, whew, what an emotional roller coaster of a journey. Y'all are gonna laugh at me, but I think I cried probably every episode. At some point in every single episode, I cried. The Crown does that to me. I don't know what it is about this show. Every single episode provokes me at some point to tears, especially like the early seasons. The early seasons, especially, just every single thing going on just got me going with tears, and I'd have to pause and grab a tissue. And I think this final season, it felt satisfying to me. It felt like a nice, satisfying conclusion. The journey felt whole. The journey felt complete. It was nice that we finally reached this point. And I think, too, because of the real life death of Queen Elizabeth II, it really just lends an emotional weight to this season. You know the direction things are ultimately going to take it at some point, because yeah, the final episode doesn't cover everything. Like I said, it kind of goes through about the mid 2000s and whatnot, primarily focusing a lot on William and Kate, and Charles and Camilla getting married and whatnot. It kind of ends there, and we the audience know where it goes pretty much. Now, how would I rank this season in comparison to other seasons? That's a tough one. Yeah, guys. For me, I have loved every moment of this show. It is genuinely kind of hard to rank the seasons. I think for a lot of people, myself included, those first 2 seasons with Claire Foy and Matt Smith, those are definitely the most superior seasons of the show, I think. And then, yeah, as the show has kind of gone through, not that the show is terrible or bad by any means, but it is, I think it's always been hard to kind of reclaim kind of that excitement and joy and wonder of those first 2 seasons of the show, because I think also as the show has gone on, it's gotten closer and closer to our own times, because when you think about it, like Princess Diana, she it seems like she died a long time ago, but in reality, in the historical timeline of things, Princess Diana didn't really die that long ago in some ways. That is still a relatively new, close history. So I think that's maybe a thing for me as well with this show, that the first 2 seasons especially are just so far removed from my own timeline, that a lot of what was going on in those first two seasons was the most fascinating and the most interesting and kind of the most brand new to me. So yeah, a lot of that kind of started fading a little bit, because as we're getting into like the 80s and the 90s, a lot of that history I'm just much more familiar with. And yeah, I was a kid, in the 90s when Princess Diana died, because I'm pretty much like the same age as like Prince William and Prince Harry. So yeah, a lot of that stuff. I was alive then. I'm aware of all that stuff. I saw those moments of history. So it is. The first two seasons definitely the best. But yeah, absolutely nothing wrong with the other seasons in my opinion. But yeah, once again, if I had to kind of rank them, probably in the order that they are going. Season 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Not that season 6 is terrible by any means, because I definitely highly enjoyed this final season. So I'm just going to go through all of the episodes really quickly, give my brief, quick thoughts on each episode. So yeah, starting with the first 3 episodes, I'm going to kind of just cluster and group the first 3 episodes together, because all those episodes were pretty much very Diana focused and central and whatnot. Focusing on the relationship between Diana and Dodie, and yeah, episode 3 ending with the car accident. Because then, yeah, episode 4 is entirely the aftermath of Diana's death. I was really curious what they were going to do with episode 4, since that is, the aftermath of Diana's death and whatnot, because, we had that wonderful, gorgeous movie, The Queen, with Helen Mirren, and that entire movie was all about the death of Diana and the crown's reaction to that. The thing is, though, I think what separates the show version of events and the movie version of events with Helen Mirren, I think a big thing is definitely, the movie with Helen Mirren, it's very much focused on Queen Elizabeth, obviously, but it's also very heavily focused on Tony Blair, I think, and kind of his role in everything. Him being the voice of the people at the time, and yeah, the Queen and the family, them seeming like they don't care and whatnot. So yeah, I was definitely really curious about how 4 was going to play out, if it was just going to feel like a repeat of the Queen. I was worried about it feeling like a repeat of the Queen. But yeah, as far as those first 3 episodes go, especially focusing on Diana and Dodie, those were some pretty emotional episodes. Yeah, guys, and I think the show, there were definitely a lot of, historic liberties taken in those first 3 episodes, and that didn't really bother me too much, because, we don't entirely know what was going on within that relationship between Dodie and Diana. There's no way we know exactly what was going on with that relationship and how they were working and functioning with one another. We have no idea what type of future they were planning with each other. For all we know, maybe this was just a summer fling they were happening. For all we know, maybe he was going to propose. Maybe she was going to say yes. We have no idea. So the show had to make a choice. This, even though this is based off of historical events, the show is still historical fiction at the end of the day, and it has to have character arcs and character journeys. Characters have to have their start, their middle, and their end. And yeah, Diana in the show is no exception. We know her end, but yeah, we don't know like the personal fine details in there. The show has a job to do. The show has to make her into a character that we have to, you either have to love her, you either have to hate her, you have to either understand her or not understand her. The show has a job to do, and it has to flesh her out as a character, make her interesting and fascinating, make her human, show her vulnerabilities and her humanity and her weaknesses, So yeah, the show definitely is playing around and taking liberties with that relationship with Diana and Dodie, and having these what if conversations that they could have possibly had, and yeah, even having Dodie make that phone call to his dad. I have no idea if he really had a conversation with his dad right there before the crash. I have no idea. So yeah, the show has to make those choices, and sometimes that frustrates people when the show kind of makes choices like that, when there's no historic backing for it. But for me, I was fine with it, because once again, the show, it has to do something with these characters, especially because we know they're about to die. And I have to just give so much praise to Elizabeth Debicki's performance. You guys, I mean, just such an incredible performance. There's been a lot of actresses who have played Princess Diana over the years. But yeah, I think Elizabeth Debicki, she goes right to the top of the list. She just, you can really tell she studied Princess Diana, you know, her mannerisms, her speech pattern. And yeah, all the applause as well to like the makeup team, the costume team, because there were times I was watching this show and there would be moments I would kind of forget and I'd be like, oh yeah, that's Elizabeth Debicki. That's not really Princess Diana. You know, I had those thoughts on numerous occasions, and it was just so eerie sometimes and kind of sad how much Elizabeth Debicki looks like Princess Diana. So yeah, the first 3 episodes, you know, kind of then going into 4, definitely some really highly emotional episodes. A nice conclusion to the Princess Diana story. So then heading into episode 5, we come back from the break, the month-long break, and we head into episode 5. It kind of skips, I think it kind of skips a couple little years there, because then we have like an older Prince William and Prince Harry from like the kind of the little boys that they had playing them initially. So episode 5, well, starting with episode 5, I should say, it was crazy to me how many episodes in this last half of the season focused on Prince William. You guys, I seriously thought Prince William was just going to have like his one big episode of the season and that would be it, you know, because the show has always done that every character has their one specific episode of the season. So I kind of just thought Prince William would have his one random episode, that would be it. But he had like, seriously, I think about 3 episodes. I'm trying to look through the notes here that I have, because he was definitely in episode 5 a lot, and then yeah, episode 7 a lot. Yeah, and I guess 9. Yeah, episode 9 as well. So yeah, out of the 6 episodes that we had left in the last chunk of the season, yeah, he had a massive amount of screen time, which I was not expecting at all. But I'm not going to complain. I did like it. But yeah, back to kind of focusing more on episode 5 here. Once again, a William-centric episode. And this was one of the episodes I found one of the most amusing, but also really sad too, because it was a rather sad episode. The hysteria, the teenage girl hysteria over Prince William, you guys. And you know, if anything, this episode made me feel terribly guilty, because as I mentioned earlier, I'm about the same age as Prince William and Prince Harry. I'm kind of like right there in the middle of their little age gap. Um, and yeah, I was a teenage girl back in the 90s and the early 2000s, you know. I had a big, huge crush on Prince William, you guys. And yeah, he would be in all the teen magazines, and I would cut out his picture and post his picture on my wall, you know. So I felt really guilty as I was watching this episode, because you would have these moments that would go to William, and he's clearly depressed. You know, he's suffering, he's depressed. You know, he's struggling with the death of his mother and whatnot, and his relationship with his brother and his father. You know, his role in the crown. You know, within the family. So this episode made me feel just so terribly guilty. Like, oh God, I'm one of those hysterical teenage girls that loved Prince William and posted his picture all over my walls. You know. But yeah, I really liked episode 5, and just kind of the emotional catharsis, that hug at the very end of the episode, you guys, between Charles and William. That was really well done. Once again, that was probably a historic liberty. That was a liberty the show was taken. We have no idea if Charles and William really had a moment like that, you know. So episode 6 was the Tony Blair episode. You guys, let me go off on a little tangent here, a little rant. Playing Tony Blair this season is Bertie Carvel. I freaking love Bertie Carvel. You guys, if you're someone who loves British television like I do, let me give you some quick recommendations for Bertie Carvel. Go watch him in Doctor Strange and Mr. Norrell. Go watch him in Dr. Foster. Go watch him in Dalgleish, which is kind of the current thing he's in outside of The Crown. Go watch those 3 shows in particular with Bertie Carvel, and you'll fall in love with him too. I freaking love Bertie Carvel. So when he was cast as Tony Blair for the season, I was like, oh yeah, goody. I was so super excited about him being in this season. And let me tell you, I left this season being frustrated with the lack of Tony Blair. You guys, the lack of Bertie Carvel more specifically. The thing is, what I've loved about just The Crown in general with the show, not only is it about the royal family, but it's also quite heavily about the prime ministers. And I think all of the other previous seasons, besides season 5, I'll kind of get to that as well. I think the first 4 seasons, especially, did a really fantastic job of highlighting each of the prime ministers and their relationship with the crown and with Elizabeth and their relationship with the people, because the prime ministers are supposed to be the voice of the people. They represent the people, and they have to let Elizabeth know, hey, this is what the people are feeling. I represent the people. This is how they feel. So I've always loved how heavily focused all the prime ministers are. Now the thing is, like, starting with season 5, once again, I was really excited when Johnny Lee Miller was cast as Prime Minister. Was it John Major? I was really excited about Johnny Lee Miller joining the cast. But then Johnny Lee Miller was barely in the 5th season, and I was frustrated about that. Because I think if you go back and watch my review for season 5, I think I definitely mentioned that I was frustrated with the lack of Johnny Lee Miller. So yeah, here's season 6. I'm definitely really frustrated with the lack of Bertie Carvel. Like I said, all the other seasons, it's such a wonderful job showcasing each of the prime ministers. And these last 2 seasons, I've been so frustrated with the lack of the prime ministers, because the unfortunate truth is that Charles and Diana and William and Harry and all that, all those characters, especially Diana, all those characters are just far more compelling and interesting, and they have a lot more drama and soap opera things going on. And yeah, Johnny Lee Miller and Bertie Carvel kind of got the short end of the stick in some ways, which is a little frustrating. But either way, I'm done with my tangent now. So episode 6 was the Tony Blair episode. Finally. I've been waiting all season for some sort of episode with Tony Blair. Maybe I'm biased because, like I said, I love Bertie Carvel. Yeah, guys. So episode 6, we get the idea that Tony Blair is a very popular figure, politician, and whatnot. And I liked all that stuff going on with him being like, hey, Queen Elizabeth, the monarchy is suffering. You're down in the polls. A lot of people don't see you as popular or relevant anymore. We need to boost those figures, And Elizabeth is kind of all for it, because initially Elizabeth is the one who kind of approaches him and like, hey, you're a popular dude. Can you help me out? So I liked this whole episode because not only is it a Tony Blair episode, but it's also just a heavy episode focused on just the public image of the royal family and how people view them and see them. And I really liked when Elizabeth was kind of talking to all of these people who have these just weird, bizarre positions, like the guy who's like the keeper of the swans or something. That is a real legit job. There's a lot of jobs in the monarchy that are just really silly and bizarre and anachronistic, and it's like you don't need these type of jobs anymore. But I liked at the same time that the show was kind of saying, hey, these are stupid, bizarre jobs, but the people who have these jobs, they take great joy and pleasure in this position, and to them it's an absolute honor, and they know the ins and outs of this job perfectly. No one else would know it. So yeah, on the outside, it's like, yeah, these positions, they probably most likely definitely need to be cut because that's funds and money that's being taken from like the taxpayers, I'm assuming, but at the same time, these are positions that mean something to these people. So it's like, well, then you're taking away that job from them, so it's like you can't win. And I loved how the episode opened and closed with, was it the Women's Institute? Because Elizabeth goes and talks to this Women's Institute, and she's very personable. She doesn't come across as, hey, I'm the queen. She's very likable and charming and making jokes, and the women love her, But then, yeah, Tony Blair at the end of the episode, he goes to the same women, but he makes it so very political. And the women are like, oh no, boo. So I like kind of that humility and humbleness that Tony Blair had to kind of go through there at the very end of the episode, So I loved how the episode opened and closed. Okay, moving on to episode 7. This is another William-centric episode. And yeah, this is his time at university and how he first meets Kate Middleton and whatnot. Yay, I love this. Kate and William were absolutely adorable this season. Yay, I am a fan of Kate and William, you guys. I don't really have much to say about that particular episode. But then, yeah, like episode 8, moving into episode 8, the Princess Margaret episode, you guys. You guys, I don't know how many times I watched this episode and had to pause and grab a tissue. Dear God. Princess Margaret has been a character on this show since the very beginning, played by multiple different actresses as well, like Elizabeth has been. Yeah, this was just such an emotional episode. We see Princess Margaret, her health is declining. She's getting like multiple strokes. She's still not treating her health the way that she perhaps should. This was a rough episode, and it's like, by the end of the episode, Margaret's going to die. If you know your history, you know where it's ultimately going, unfortunately. And another big part of this episode is a flashback to 1945, that World War II has ended, and I believe this is a real historical thing that happened. The show, I think, kind of plays around with it, but I believe this is a real thing that happened back in 1945, and Elizabeth and Margaret, they head out into the streets to celebrate the end of the war with people, and they go to the Ritz, and I love the running story going on in this episode, because Margaret, the older Margaret, all she kind of wanted to keep doing was tell this story, about that night at the Ritz, and the Elizabeth that was then, the Elizabeth that was part of then versus who she is now and whatnot. Yeah, one of my favorite episodes in this last batch of episodes for sure. Princess Margaret has definitely been a very popular character for me. I love her story because she's a historical figure that it's like I know she existed, but I really didn't know too terribly much about her and whatnot. So this show has definitely kind of opened my eyes to a lot more of her story and whatnot for me to like go research, And the ending, oh dear God, that ending, and the girls are coming back from the night at the Ritz, and then it's the younger versions of them standing there, but then all of a sudden it changes, and it's the older Margaret. They're talking to her younger sister and whatnot. Ooh, oh my God, you guys, that got me going. I had to pause for a long time and wipe my eyes. And then episode number 9. This is the upcoming Golden Jubilee for Queen Elizabeth II. And yeah, another Kate and William centric episode. Yeah, as far as Kate and William go, yeah, the two of them by the end of the episode making things much more official. Yes. And I think this was the episode too, the famous instance of when he first kind of started falling in love with Kate at that modeling show, and she's in that really risque dress and whatnot. If you've seen the pictures of that, so yeah, this episode covers that modeling shoot and whatnot. So I like that was included. And yeah, the Golden Jubilee, and yeah, once again, Elizabeth kind of struggling, like, are people even going to care? Because plus at the start of the episode, the Queen Mother dies at the start of the episode, and yeah, Elizabeth is in just such a really dark, lonely place, which I don't blame her. A lot of people are kind of leaving her one by one, and it's really sad. And here's her Golden Jubilee, and I mean, she still has her family to celebrate with her, but it still just feels like a lonely experience, and she's not sure if she has that popularity. She's worried people are going to boo her when she steps out onto the balcony during the Golden Jubilee. And I love that moment that William's with Kate, and he kind of makes that decision like, hey, I should be with her. She gave me this free pass that I don't have to be there on the balcony, but I think I should be there to support her. And I did. I love that moment on the balcony. And then the final episode. This episode is exploring Elizabeth's her existential crisis that she's starting to have, because all of her advisors and the church and whatnot, they're all like, hey, you're 80 years old. At some point, you're going to die. So we need to prepare for your funeral. And I love the comedic element, because Prince Philip had already planned for his funeral, and he was like, oh man, I enjoyed it. It was just wonderful. It felt really good to do that. Like, he was just so overjoyed, like, hey, when I die, it's all good to go, But yeah, Elizabeth kind of had the reverse feeling of it, like, I don't want to think about by death just yet. And yeah, it's even to Prince Philip, she was like, I don't even want to think about you dying just yet. What's wrong with you, man? And I love that moment. One of my favorite parts of the finale, you guys, was that part where she's in the castle or whatever, the palace, and she hears the guy who's playing the bagpipes outside, and she calls him in. She's like, "Hey, you, come here," and she's like, I need you to pick me out a song to play during my funeral." And I loved how this guy was just kind of flustered, like, "What, me? You want me to pick your funeral song? Oh my god." So I love that moment when he fixes on a song that he thinks that'll be good, and Elizabeth seems to really like it. And I liked how they showed those one ladies who were like in that one room, like fixing the chairs or whatever, and one of the girls starts kind of singing what the lyrics of the song are. That was a really wonderful part. I love that whole sequence of events, and that, yeah, another really sad moment and whatnot. And I meant to watch parts of Elizabeth's funeral, her real life funeral. I meant to watch parts of that to see what was that the same music. I'm assuming it was the same bagpipe music that was playing. And yeah, another big thing that happened in the episode, Charles and Camilla finally get married and whatnot. However you feel about that. Even though I'm not the biggest fan of Charles and Camilla, like in real life, even though I'm not the biggest fan of them in real life, the thing is, like, as it's presented on the show, it's like I like that Charles is kind of stuck by the side of this woman, and she has stuck by his side through all of this bullshit and whatnot. It's like they are genuinely meant to be with one another, and they should have been with each other a long time ago. And throughout the last chunk of episodes, there was a lot of focus on Harry. We finally got some more screen time with Harry, and yeah, kind of focusing a lot on his mistakes. We get the big infamous costume, the Nazi costume that Harry wears and whatnot. We definitely get a lot of that back and forth between William and Harry, and kind of their jealousy in a sense of each other, because William is jealous of Harry's more, what looks like more apparent freedom at times, but yeah, Harry at the same time, because he feels like he's not protected like William is, and if he makes a mistake, then he's all over the tabloids. So I liked kind of that dynamic between William and Harry that was going on. I think the show definitely was like, hey, we read Prince Harry's book, let's throw little elements of that in this narrative and whatnot. So yeah, the show definitely is kind of, it's almost like it's kind of trying to foreshadow the future of Prince Harry and whatnot, like the impending doom that is coming for him. And yeah, I definitely can't end this review without talking about the wonderful cameos by Claire Foy and Olivia Colman at the very end of this episode. I think that was supposed to be Westminster Abbey, I think, if I'm not mistaken, at the very end of the episode. In the entire finale, Elizabeth kept having back and forth conversations with her selves, her younger self and her middle-aged self. She kept having conversations because she was struggling, like, should I abdicate the throne and go ahead and pass it on to Charles while he's in the prime of his life, So she kind of kept going back and forth, both versions of herself. It's like she had like an angel and a devil on her shoulders in some ways, because one of them, like Claire Foy's Elizabeth, was saying, hey, this role is all about duty, you need to stick it out until the very end, but then yeah, Olivia Colman's version was like, you know what, it's the right thing to do, go ahead and abdicate and give to Charles, so I liked kind of that dynamic there. And yeah, the very final scene of this episode is, yeah, Elizabeth at Westminster Abbey, I think it was, and yeah, her once again talking to both of her other versions of herself that we've seen on the show. And yeah, her finally, I think, coming to terms with things, coming to things peacefully, and yeah, just her walking down that long hallway or whatever, the aisle, just a really effective ending to the show. I think really, really beautiful and well done, and just kind of leaves you there, really kind of thinking about things, and yeah, where it's all going, you know where it's going to be heading to eventually, So, is that it for my thoughts? I believe that is it for my overall thoughts for The Crown. I've been sitting here talking for about 30 minutes now. My recorder is telling me. I'm definitely curious, you guys, your thoughts on this final season of The Crown. how did it stack up compared to other seasons? Like I said, for me, definitely a really enjoyable season. It don't compare to like the first two seasons especially, but it was still really enjoyable. Definitely a really highly emotional season, which I was expecting it to be a very emotional season, because I was like, we have to cover Diana's death and the Queen Mother and Princess Margaret. You know, I was like, we got to cover all these people dying. So I knew it was going to be a pretty emotional, intense final season, and I was pretty happy with it. I found it to be very satisfying, and I'm sad that the show is over. Yeah, guys, I look forward to this show every year that it's on, you know, and yeah, it's gonna be sad. It's gonna be sad that I don't have this to look forward to anymore. But yeah, what a wonderful journey with the entirety of The Crown. So you guys, that is it for my thoughts and feelings on The Crown. As I said, leave your thoughts down below in the comments and have a conversation with me if you want. So that's it for this video. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And if you like this video, you may like these other videos. Bye, guys.